We are now within the 12-month injury window for the 2027 World Cup, which means every time a player hits the grass, we're going to be holding our breath. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of The Late Sub, presented to you by Ally Bank. I am your host, Claire Watkins. It is Wednesday, July 29th. And yeah, this one's going to be a little bit of a tougher conversation this week, where we're just going to be talking some injuries. We're starting to see some knee injuries happen in the second half of the season. Very natural, but always a little bit stressful when you are thinking about the big tournament next summer, and also the way some of these NWSL teams are adjusting to injuries in real time. Always hoping the best for these players, but sometimes you have to watch how these clubs react to adversity to learn about who they really are. Let's dig in. So the NWSL saw another really interesting weekend of action this weekend. Some good stuff, some really interesting stuff. But that anecdotally, for me, is not where most of the attention from fans came from after the last weekend. There has kind of been, unfortunately, a slew of injuries now in the NWSL over the last couple of weeks. It's by nature just what happens throughout the course of a season. And we are starting to see sort of the calendar creep into the second half of the regular season for this NWSL year. And also, yes, we've hit the 12-month mark for the World Cup. Again, sort of anecdotally, I was at WNBA All-Star Weekend all weekend in Chicago, and I had multiple people come up to me saying, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And it was not about basketball. It was about what we perhaps fear happened with Emily Sonnett this weekend. People are worried, and not just because of concern, of course, for Sonnett herself or Gotham's season. But again, there's always that ticking clock behind you of what this means possibly for a World Cup next year. So if you haven't heard, Emily Sonnett had to leave Gotham's game this weekend against Portland within the first 10 minutes or so with an apparent non-contact left knee injury, and had to leave the game by a stretcher. So she appeared very calm. She was not in a ton of pain or distress, but that sometimes rarely underlines or underlies the severity of a knee injury like that. Everyone knows those three letters that we all hate to say, which is ACL. That has not been confirmed as of this recording, but we are probably just talking about a mid to long-term knee injury. And sometimes when that does happen, players know what happened. It's not necessarily something that's associated with a ton of physical pain. It's destabilization, and they react accordingly. So as of this recording, again, Gotham interim manager Sean Harris did say on Tuesday of this week that Sonnett has already had surgery, but he did not have an official update on her prognosis as possible between this and when we get this released. That maybe has already happened. But it does feel like an issue that's going to hold her out for some time, at least in terms of Gotham's prospects for the next couple of months. Whether this is a simple knock to Sonnett, really fingers crossed, but again, that's not really the messaging that we're getting out of the club so far, or something that is going to keep her off of the field for a while. I think you look at, again, that overarching concern, of course, for the player herself, for her NWSL club, and you do hope that she has as easy a recovery as possible. But like I said, and we're going to start referring to this probably in the short term, just again, as the injury window, right? We have passed the year mark for the World Cup final. We are within 12 months of that tournament ticking off. And so if you do get, for example, I'm not saying this is true for Sonnett, but for anyone who kind of has this happen, and we have seen some players in the last couple of weeks have this occur, if you're given something like a 12-month recovery timeline for here on out, it's at best a sprint, and at worst, an impossibility that you'll be able to make it back for the World Cup in 2027. And obviously, we're going to talk about this a little bit more throughout the episode. One's position, veteran leadership, age, etc., comes into play when we do injury math. And we're going to discuss those things certainly throughout the next couple of months as they become more concrete. But like in any cycle, normal for seasons, normal for years, these long-term injuries do surely but slowly start to rack up. The battle against ACLs in women's football feels like it can never be truly won, with implications far beyond this season. And plans can go astray faster than you think. I think this moment for Sonnett, again, without anything super concrete, but just sort of imagining what could be true, you think perhaps of Becky Sauerbrunn before 2023, not being able to make a quick enough return from that lingering foot injury to go to the 2023 World Cup. And we thought for sure it's a sprint, but she's going to make it. It's a sprint, but she's going to make it, and ultimately was not able to make that squad. You think of Mel Swanson's, freak patella injury in April of 2023, the ongoing struggles to get Catarina Macario serious time in a major tournament. These best laid plans, and this is where it starts to get freaky, right? Is again, because this window is shortening and you get closer and closer, and things that even just hold you out for a couple of months could have an impact on your ability to play in that tournament. And anecdotally, again, if we are talking about ACL tears, and again, I'm not just talking about Sonnett. We saw Jordan Heinema tear an ACL. Obviously, Dudinha tore her ACL at the beginning of June. We're talking of, about kind of bigger picture here. Those recoveries are getting longer, not shorter. For a long time in women's soccer, I think there was this idea, I think this was even true when I sort of entered the space, that one could return from an ACL injury in around 9 months. But I would say in both women's basketball and in women's soccer, just from being around it over the last couple of years, it feels like the sports science is as much rewarding longer recovery times rather than shorter ones. It cuts down significantly on the possibility of catastrophic re-injury or major injury to a different part of the body. It's like they are as much tackling the muscle imbalances that come from a knee injury as the knee injury itself. In basketball, you're seeing people do prehab before surgery. You're seeing people wait to do the surgery. Some people have the idea that you do the surgery very quickly, but then you extend your recovery time again to make sure that everything else in your body is good to go by the time your knee is good to go. We are seeing rewards, like I said, for a little bit of a more careful consideration of that recovery time, which I do think in the grand scheme puts things more at a year than at 9 months anymore. Not to say that it can't happen, but that is, I think, where the sports science is going. And this stuff can linger too, as we know, right? You think of Macario for sure after her first knee injury in 2022, Sam Kerr as well, her ACL in 2024 that turned into this big 20-month absence because of those issues stemming from surgery. I don't want to be too doom and gloom, but I do think there's perhaps an era where these national teams would try to bring along a player who is only partially back to playing because the player pool wasn't as strong. I'd be surprised if that was the case going into 2027. So not to be so dramatic as to be like, these things have international implications, but increasingly they do. And I just kind of want to explore on the NWSL level as well, some of these injuries stacking up, because I think we're already starting to see teams having to adjust, maybe struggling a little bit in the transition, figuring out what the rest of their seasons look like as they start to lose players, their availability due to injury time. So let's start with the big story here, right? Which is Gotham. Gotham had 2 big things happen with players this week, right? And that actually brings us right into this week's segment, which is Ally Outstanding Asset. This segment, as always, is brought to you by our partner, Ally Bank. Ally is dedicated to making it easier to be a women's sports fan, starting with providing the tools you need to spend and save. Ally Bank, member FDIC. So Gotham, as we know, is already thin, very thin on their back line. And I know fans and pundits have been sounding the alarm on the lack of depth there for weeks now, not just after this Emily Sonnett injury. This is due to a variety of injuries that they've been dealing with and also the trading out of Lily Reel to Boston. And there are these questions, which is that Gotham's defense is actually so good. Systemically, they're set up really well to perform. They've got really incredible players. Each individual player that they've got slotted in are like some of these all world-class players. But you already start to wonder is like, when do you bend under the cracks of just how many absences you're dealing with and the thinness of this back line, which already had made, to the point of an outstanding asset, Emily Sonnett, a really more important asset for them than ever, and not just one piece of a much larger puzzle. For Gotham, right, we've already seen the Midge Purce outside back era, the Guru Riotin outside back era, the necessity for Jess Carter's kind of crucial versatility between either wide player or center back. We've seen an emphasis on shoring up of the defensive midfield to try to ward off as much pressure as possible, and I do think that has implications sometimes for Gotham's attack. On the positive side, the way Gotham plays is so structurally sound in the defense, moving the ball quickly while playing a high line, good communications with their defensive midfielders to move into sort of that fluid 5 or 3 back, depending on possession, running one attacking outside back alongside one that stays home more often. The way they're doing this is like a perfect dance that they do. And this is part of how they generate all of their results, genuinely, is kind of it's built from the back and it's built from this fluidity and this positional understanding. And not for nothing, as we know, they have a goalkeeper who loves to play sweeper keeper, which is sometimes awesome and sometimes terrifying. But again, how much is too much? Sonnett is so important to making that whole ecosystem work if she's out for a number of weeks or months. They had already lost Kayla Duran to an ACL earlier this year. She was playing outside back for them at the beginning of the year. There's just not much there other than Bruninia and Mandy Freeman to help them. Carter will surely, again, we're recording this before the Wednesday night game. We'll get some illumination on sort of how they're adjusting there, but I imagine Carter will have to slot in next to Tierna Davidson with Sonnett out. And that's kind of it, right? Can Mandy Freeman play center back in a pinch if they need it? How much can Bruninia be available? This is a thin group right now. And you have to wonder if, even though they've avoided it so far, they might have to look to the transfer market now for backline help. And we don't know the books for Gotham, right? But do they have room under the cap if they need to figure out how to shore that up with an impact player? Because Emily Sonnett is not easy to replace. in this system, in the U.S. system, in any of it. She's a very special player. She's an outstanding asset, right? She's an excellent communicator. She's remarkable. Like, I really think that Emily Sonnett's superpower on the pitch is controlling off-ball space. She makes herself bigger in ways, like, not necessarily physically, obviously, but just with her pacing, with her spacing as well, the way that she's able to communicate with her teammates. She creates this net around her that other teams find very, very difficult to find passing lanes in or making runs off the ball. She works great with her goalkeepers, and it's a compliment to her quality how tough losing a player like that will be for the Bats and what it could mean for the U.S., because her leadership and experience is equally invaluable off the pitch as what she's able to do on it. And just like Gotham Squad cares about the fans, Ally Bank cares about keeping fans close to the game they love. Ally Bank, member FDIC. Being a women's sports fan can add up quickly. From tickets, your game day fit, tailgating, getting to the game, Ally Bank gets that. Ally is dedicated to making it easier to be a women's sports fan. With Ally's accounts, you save automatically while you spend. That way, you don't have to miss the next big rivalry game and can focus on what matters to you. Learn more at ally.com. Ally Bank, member FDIC. Talking about cap space, though, some of that got freed up for Gotham this week as well, right? It's going to be a huge absence in their attack. Gotham announced this week the departure of Esther, immediate departure of Esther. I think shocking a lot of people. She's their all-time leading club goal scorer in all competitions. So it's not due to injury, obviously, but personal reasons, causing her and her family to return to Spain immediately. Now, Esther has been obviously a huge part of Gotham's success over the last 3 years and was on something of a tear recently as well. I think it was 3 goals in her last 4 games. She was hitting for them. Like, it was all working and still playing really important high efficiency football for them. And on the flip side, you know, maybe you see for Gotham's side, maybe some good preemptive business. If you were thinking that maybe Esther's getting a little bit burnt out, maybe she needs to go home. They do pick up Sam Kerr, right? There was that question when they picked Sam Kerr up. You go, oh my gosh, how does this work with Esther? Maybe there are always things happening behind the scenes where you have player needs that are things that the public don't know just yet. That's your other elite talent, right? Kerr to take that space, but that's a lot of change. And they're not exactly the same type of player. And it's also not like Gotham is known for sort of their free-flowing attack anyway. And so now, again, you've got Sonnett out. You can't put Carter out wide. So then you've got to, what do you do with figuring out your outside backs? Are we going to see Purse again in this outside back depth chart? We've got Jordan Dudley, who's dealing with a head injury right now. So it's like thin in the front, thin in the back. There are so many moving parts. Players are not playing in their natural positions, and they're doing, to their credit, a very good job. But how much is too much? And Juan Carlos Amoros is out on paternity leave, which I think is great, genuinely. But he is not there right now to sort of manage some of these additional moving parts, even beyond probably what he had imagined when he stepped back for a little bit. But also, who knows? The Bats really do seem like a squad built to withstand just about anything. They play like a vice that slowly closes on their opponents. But at what point is that vice also constricting the club itself and what they do on the pitch, especially without key players available anymore? The ultimate question for Gotham. Never count them out. As for what this means, international implications, and like I said, I'm going to speak in generalities because we've not gotten official prognosis for Sonnett yet. But I think you just kind of do have to look again at, knee injury generalities. Exactly 12 months, and now actually less than 12 months before the beginning of the 2027 World Cup. I think the road back for a defender is a lot harder than if you're shooting at a return as a forward, maybe a spark plug off the bench in the attack or the attacking midfield. You don't really sub center backs in or out of an international game. That is not common practice unless you're like switching to a 5-back depending on lead. Like that might happen late in a game, but in the first 60 to 75 minutes of a game, you're only subbing a center back out if something has gone wrong. And especially from what we've seen from Emma Hayes, she's not someone who likes to change her back line very much. That's not going to be her MO, I don't think. So this was, I think, crucial going back to Becky Sauerbrunn in 2023. If you can't play a full 90 as a central defender, it's really hard to make an on-field case for inclusion, which is, like I said, exactly what Sauerbrunn dealt with in 2023. But you also can't replace Sonnett's experience. They'd probably have to move in a different direction entirely. There's not a veteran you can bring in. If you lose someone like Sonnett, you're probably going younger. You're getting someone experienced. I've said before in my mock drafts, my mock rosters, that I don't love the physical fragility of the U.S. women's national team's current core CB group. I think there's a lot to discuss there. I'm reticent to do so before we get something a little bit more concrete. But I think we can start saying as we move forward that if you are in a defensive position, if you are a defender, it's a lot harder to come back because they do need you to be able to play a significant amount of minutes as opposed to maybe being a player that can come off the bench, play 30 and make an impact a little bit higher up on the field. So that's Gotham. Gotham, always very interesting. Wish all the best for Sonnett. Really, really hope that she's okay and that this will not be a long recovery for her. But even just looking around the league a little bit, right? Another team getting hit kind of hard by this stuff is San Diego. They're on a little bit of a skid right now, and it's hard not to think that some of the injury issues play a factor into why. They enter July, right? That return in first place in the NWSL standings. The Wave now sit in fourth, having already played one more game than the three teams in front of them now. They've only got one win since coming back, which was a very impressive handling of Gotham. But since they've suffered a couple of upsets, in my opinion, they lose to Angel City, they lose to Seattle. Having watched both games, it's not like they're fully reeling. I don't think that they've changed their style of play a lot. Everything just seems a tiny bit off in both of the crucial boxes, whether on the attacking end or the defensive end, while they're still stringing things together very well in the middle third. And you do have to wonder, how much is this loss of Dudinha really affecting them? And the fact that this big midseason signing of Catarina Macario that the Wave went out of their way to grab early rather than picking her up on a free transfer a couple months later hasn't resulted in any time on the field yet. Dudinha touched every level of play for the Wave. She impacted their width, their clinical passing in the final third. She added 5 goals and 4 assists just herself in terms of production. It is not an output both replicated easily by an individual player, nor is it easy to replicate in the aggregate. I do think San Diego would be fair to want a little bit more from one of their other premier Brazilian signings in Ludmilla, who has at times been asked to slip into similar spaces where Dudinha operated before her ACL tear in early June. I think Ludmilla has actually been very good at drawing defenders. I think when she's at her best, she is opening up spaces for other players with her off-ball activity. I think she's really, really good at that. She's also good at recovery runs. She's not afraid to get a good crunchy tackle in. But they need more traditional production from her, I think. I think at some point you can do all of the off-ball work, but what are you doing when the ball's at your feet? And I think that it'd be fair for San Diego to hope for a little bit more from her, especially as she takes up that wing side that Dudinha had been taking up. And then also I just think an interesting thing for San Diego in managing the second stretch of the season is not the midfield. The midfield really looks fine. It's these fine margins on either end. They need buyers to continue to break good for them, I think. Again, more from Ludmilla. Should also mention that San Diego lost 18-year-old defender Trinity Armstrong to another significant knee injury last week. You just hope that player is good. She's come back from so much. They do have the depth to deal with that, but that is another key young player that they would have loved to get more from this season. I feel really bad. She just came back from one significant knee injury and then suffered one in the other knee. That is simply brutal. And again, this is what these recovery times are trying to avoid as much as possible. You feel bad for that player. I hope that she's all right. And I hope that San Diego is able to continue to support her through this. So yeah, for San Diego, it's very interesting. They need the functional things that win you soccer games. Don't concede, and you need to score. And how can you figure that out when your MVP candidate is no longer on the pitch? And international implications are better though, right? Dudinha, she tore her ACL at the beginning of June. It really makes you think that she's going to be able to be 100% to go by the real thing. Like I said, she's only 21 years old. Age is a factor into this. She's functionally tore her ACL 13 months before the tournament. I'm really hopeful that there's going to be a lot of runway for her to make it back well in time. For Macario, the question lingers always, but there's still so much time left. And one of the things about a player that does struggle with injuries regularly is they do know what it takes to be back at their best when they are on the pitch. And so I feel like with Macario, we kind of just have to sit back and not worry so much. Is she playing in the end of July of 2026? But is she good to go at the beginning of 2027? She's going to be in that conversation, in that mix if she is. I'm sure what she's working with San Diego right now is with that in mind. Another team that I think is actually having even more trouble sometimes with their ACL issues, and we talked about this up top, this is another international player that is, oh man, it's really, really close. It's going to be a sprint, is Chicago. Poor Chicago. When it rains, it pours. The season's not going great. Their general manager gets fired. Their results are still not very good. And then recent Canadian international signing, Jordan Heinema, who in terms of their attack, which has not been super, productive, but she's been a good spark in spurts for them. I think that she has been finding herself a little bit more after, I think, just having some trouble sort of with her style of play in Seattle. She tore her ACL last week. And it's like, what can Chicago do? You have one of your main producers and she goes down. I don't know where the Stars turn now to try to build attack again to get the aggregate. Jamise Joseph is finally starting consistently again after the break, thank God. But the team has also been without Mallory Swanson due to a lower leg injury in recent weeks. And I've gone long enough on the Stars this season. You can go back to one of our past episodes on that. I've seen others have also noted that Chicago alternates between training on grass and really playing on really chunky turf up in Evanston. That can't be good for the body. I think I've been told before that as much as players don't like playing on turf, they really don't like alternating the playing surfaces. That can be really, really, really hard on your body. What this means for the club, more of the same. You never really felt like their greatest sin was their attacking lineup anyway, so much as those players can't really get service from the defense of the midfield, pinned back so constantly, can't even really generate anything going the other way. But then almost more brutal to be losing this bright spot of Heidema, who it seemed like, she was able to do some set piece goals, header goals. She was finding stuff out of nothing. That was huge for them. It kept them afloat in a couple of different ways. And she, again, it's in this window now for the World Cup next year. And also just with Swanson, you want her to have as much linear progress as possible, which is, her being on the pitch. And you want that to be supported by the club and their infrastructure. So frustration upon frustration for Chicago. And then for international implications, this is, again, where the positional realities kind of aid both players, especially Heidema. She's going to be right on the edge for making it back in 2027. She's in within, again, that 12-month window. She's not outside of it. But as an attacker, you can be that player that can go 30 off the bench, focusing on sprint speed and what you can bring in short spurts. You don't have to be full 90 fit if they still think you are the right player to come on. Also, I don't really know. This is a whole other topic for another day. The state of Canada's player pool and their results over the last 12 months. They are, this World Cup qualifying is going to be very interesting for them. I think they're going to do well, but I think that they cannot rely necessarily on other players to step up when it comes to the deep depths of their roster. So Heidema might have a way back. I would like to think she has a way back. And then for Swanson, I do think the ultimate goal has to be avoiding significant injury at all costs, even if that does mean that sometimes she's not going to be on the field. I want so badly to see some time from her with the U.S. in October against Spain, but also her return cannot be rushed if her path deviates in some ways from what we've seen, for example, from Sophia Wilson, who has had a really nice return to the NWSL. I think the patience comes in of, if it doesn't make sense for her to be out on the pitch, she shouldn't be out on the pitch, because the one thing that cannot happen is a season-ending injury for Mallory Swanson. And so even if it's some, one step forward, two steps back, I think, or two steps forward, one step back, I think is probably more what we're looking for. I think we have to accept that and hope that Chicago is monitoring her fitness as well as possible. And then just a last note for a team that I think they are interesting to me. They've been doing better coming out of the break. They are still dealing with their own injuries and absences, and it kind of throws in some of the wonky roster building that they continue to sort of have happen, which is Angel City. Japan international Jun Endo suffered what appears to be a long-term knee injury a few weeks ago. So brutal for player and for club. It seemed like Endo was doing a good job of being a core piece, whether off the bench or a starter for the Japan national team before her original ACL tear. She's such an important aspect of that team's width. She's a really good box-to-box player on the outside. Angel City had already lost Endo's Nadeshiko teammate Hina Sagita to an ACL at the beginning of the season. Losing those two players are not good for Angel City. They need these technical players to keep that momentum going, control over games. It's been such an injury struggle for them. And it kind of keeps moving in this direction of Angel City keeps building their whole on-field story into what might have been. You want them to have as many players available as possible to be able to try to make this late season run. They've been doing quite well coming out of the break. You want that momentum to continue, but they can't handle a ton of attrition. This is not a team that can do so. They're pulling players out. They're pulling new players in. Injury loss could be devastating for them. And so I think that something like Endo, where it is much just like brutal to watch again, this player who's worked so hard to come back and then to suffer another injury, or even you just go back again to best laid plans for a long-term injury for a player like Hina Sagita. They need to have all systems go if they're going to be able to get out of this sort of muck of the middle of the table that they've been stuck in so much. International implications, Endo, it's hard to know exactly what things look like for her in Japan. They're playing so well as a group right now. She has been in and out, obviously, quite a lot. I would like to think Sugita would be back comfortably in the mix in 2027, having suffered that injury this spring. Japan's playing really well. They don't necessarily need to be bringing a ton of new players back in, but you do hope for those players that they're going to have that opportunity. So this was not exhaustive. This was just sort of what was sticking out to me, and this is maybe just a cornerstone for us to revisit over the next year as we get closer and closer to the World Cup, where you do hope the best for players. You have to trust their recoveries. You have to trust that teams are taking the best possible care for them. But you're never going to have exactly the team you want all the time. And that is simply the nature of sports. And I think that the way that teams adapt is sometimes as interesting as the way they were playing before they faced that adversity.